Oh, hi everyone. Hi, I see all of you. Hi, Deborah, over there in Spain. I see you there. Thanks for joining us.
Oh.
Well, we're going to. We prayed for a movie that would be very practical, and the Spirit gave us one called "Life Is a House" from 2001.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what this movie will be especially helpful for is that it deals with relationships and the need to have a healed perception of relationships. And David had written in that beautiful quote where we learned that conflicting outcomes are impossible. And what better way to learn that conflicting outcomes are impossible but through families, relationships, and neighbors. To teach you that nothing is ever going wrong, that there actually is no such thing as a dysfunctional family. It's just a dysfunctional perception of the world is what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with the ego's lens, and nothing's ever going wrong. We have a teenage son in here who has rage issues. We have father who has suppressed anger issues. We have an ex-wife who's angry. And we have neighbors who are angry. And the movie is about a man who is diagnosed with cancer, and then through facing the crisis of facing cancer, he decides to heal, to go for healing, to go for connection, to go for the love, even though everything in his world seems like it's falling apart.
Yeah.
So that's pretty exciting.
God, yeah. That's everything, isn't it? Because it was yesterday, actually, while everybody was talking, and I was remembering this movie. I'd only seen it once, and I thought, oh, this seems like this could fit the bill. And then after that, I heard, you're the family therapist. And I was laughing to myself, you're the family therapist? What does that mean? And then Jesus was telling me, well, listen, you've healed a lot with your this seeming family. So obviously that's the reason why I'm sat here. And it's like, yeah, all of that love is truly underneath it. And it's like this huge dynamic that we're all brought into no matter what. If you find yourself in a body, there's seemingly mum, dad, and there's this configuration that we find ourselves in. And that often is the most hardest configuration to be met, to be heard, to be seen, to be understood. And of course, that brings up a lot of conflict within all of that, trying to find your way. And I was just thinking about it from, like the child's perspective. It's like you want to be free, and the parents feel so responsible, and they want to kind of guide you in a certain way. And it's like they can't get it right, you can't get it right, and you just feel like you're in this complete and utter hopeless situation. And I think that's where I found myself. I felt like I'm in a completely hopeless situation. I think seemingly different from everyone else, and I'm not being completely understood here, and I'm not really understanding where they're coming from, to be honest. So it's like these two perceptions that are just like, wow, how on earth can you work this out? And so, of course, I studied to be a therapist, and I went through much therapy, talking about a lot of this stuff, actually. And really, it came down to Jesus is the maestro. He's the only one to get through on all this and be like exactly what you said. It's like, well, actually, the thing is you've got a perceptual problem about what you think is going on, and you're wanting it in the way that you want it to be. You have an idea about what you want, and that's not truly what's going on. There is a much greater love underneath all of this. And I think, in actual fact, that's what this movie shows, that there's a big conflict going on. And in looking at it in world terms, you just think, okay, this seems pretty hopeless, actually. But of course, as we all know, we have to hand everything over to Jesus, because he's the only one that can help us.
Yeah. And with Francis's session last night, there were a few people that came on and said, I'm going for it. I'm going for this inner calling. I'm going for this healing. I want to be guided by Spirit, but I'm a bit afraid of my family's reactions. I'm a bit afraid of how it will be interpreted by my family if I really go for this in a deep way. And this movie is a great tool for releasing expectations. Kenneth went on and became a therapist. I was in graduate school in psychology, and then Jesus got a hold of both of us and said, shush, enough of the psychotherapy and the psychiatry and this and this. I need you to have a healed mind, because until you find your own happiness, you're not going to bring happiness to any situation. In fact, there's the pamphlet that Kenneth and I really enjoy, the psychotherapy pamphlet, and in that Jesus says that healing occurs the instant the therapist forgets to judge the patient. That's when healing occurs. The instant the therapist forgets to judge the patient. So it's that simple, that our problem is one of judgment and false interpretation, and we have a perceptual problem. None of us come from dysfunctional families. We come from God. That's right. God is our source. God is our creator, and God isn't dysfunctional. So this ego, this tiny little mad idea that wandered in to our mind, which we were supposed to laugh at, but I guess we forgot to laugh at something so ridiculous. It was just kind of da 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 da. We could have just went, ha, ha, bye, da, 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 let it wander on out. But we took it seriously. We took the idea, the belief in separation seriously, and now look at our perception of the world. You know, it's very fragmented, and now we're dealing with health issues, seemingly body issues. We're dealing with issues with our families, our friends, our partners, our neighbors. That's mostly the questions that you're writing in are these kind of issues. And the sooner that we come to a realization that, oh my God, it's not that at all. It's just I have a perceptual problem. Number one, I'm hallucinating. I'm seeing a world that isn't even there. That's a pretty big hallucination problem. Perceiving a world that doesn't exist, that is pretty big. And then it's psychotic because we've had a break from reality, a break from spirit, and now we're seeing something that's temporary instead of our eternal nature. And we're schizophrenic too because we're listening to multiple voices. They're called our family and friends and partners and everything like this. And we think they're real voices. But we forgot the one voice that matters, our intuitive voice. The voice for God that speaks for us inside. And we're listening to all these other voices now and thinking they're real people. And that's a pretty big mental problem. But this movie shows us that even when there's a crisis, and even when we think everything is gone completely dysfunctional, that's when the Holy Spirit can come and work the miracles in our mind. Just from our wish to heal. Because that's what, what's his name? George Monroe.
Yeah, George.
Is our main character, George Monroe. It's played by Kevin Kline.
Yeah.
And he basically, he's at a job he's been at for years. He's very bored and discontent. He feels like he's not appreciated. He's being fired. So he's losing his job. He's diagnosed with cancer. And he doesn't see much of his ex-wife. Robin, played by Kristen Scott Thomas, and he doesn't see much of his teenage son. I don't know what that name was again, but Sam. He doesn't see much of his son Sam, and his Sam is into goth. He's a teenager. He's dressing in black and putting makeup on and jewelry and cranking his music up loud and locking himself into his room because he's so angry at the world. He's a teenager that's furious. And so 3 of the main characters have a lot of anger. Sam, at least, his is not hidden. He expresses his rage. He's a raging teenager. And his father and his mother, who are divorced, both have a lot of anger about their lives. And the love is still there, like it is for all of us, but it's very much under the surface. And then it's all got to play out. I think this is a movie full of miracles. Yeah. And we were saying it came out 2001. This movie came out 2 weeks before the towers came down in 2001 in New York City, the Twin Towers. And there's a parallel there, because when the towers came down, it was a time for everybody to look within and examine what's going on inside me in this time of crisis. And that was 2001. Now, 19 years later, we have a pandemic. Whatever we couldn't get from the towers coming down, now we get a second chance, because now it's a global pandemic. Both those events are kind of rock the world. But it's really just rock your mind. Like, what is going on in perception that we would feel so disturbed? What is it that we believe in about ourselves? Maybe it's just this identity confusion we've had of forgetting our Christ nature and taking on, what do we call it, COVID? It's a conceptual, individualized identity called the human being. We've all had a case of COVID, and it's more than 19. It's COVID 16 billion we're dealing with here. And is there a serum for it? No. It's a correction in the mind. It's an internal tweak called enlightenment, called self-realization. Is the end of our COVID 16 billion diagnosis. We have to get out of this individual sense of identity and get back into the truth. We need a very, very strong dose of truth to handle this COVID situation. And this movie is going to help us, because there's nothing better than healing through relationships. I mean, meditation is good, but Jesus says it's tedious and time-consuming. So he gives us a solution that's a fast track to self-realization, which is admit that you have a perceptual problem. Don't keep denying it and playing human as if you're going to be a strong hero. Don't try to be the hero of the dream. Give it up and admit you have a perceptual problem, and then just be willing to be shown the way. And I think this movie, when I first saw it, I could feel the swirl in my heart, like, whoa, this is really strong medicine, strong stuff.
Yeah, because it's like George, he gets diagnosed with the cancer, and then, as you said, it's like that's like the wake-up call. And so it seems like it's all fragmented, which of course is his own mind, and now he really, really needs to face it. And so that's what he does through the relationships with his sons and with his son and everything, because there wasn't a strong foundation, in a way, like using the house metaphor, like the foundation had completely gone and he's completely fallen apart, and now he needs to find that foundation, and that foundation is going to be found within the relationships that were in front of his very eyes, that he didn't know how to have the guts, I guess, to reach over the line and to be vulnerable and just say how what he really wanted. It was all just being played out. And then when he gets into this situation, it's like now the forgiveness program is coming up, and it's like, okay, I'm going to face everything now, and I'm bringing everybody together. And that's what we're all doing, really. And that's how I see the journey. Is like, you are doing it for everyone, and of course, you know, we've all had that reflection of you're being selfish on this journey, but in actual fact, you're giving the gift to absolutely everyone when you're truly following your heart. And that's what George does. George has the wake up that I've got to truly do what is in my heart. And when you truly do what's in your heart, that is truly what is absolutely best for everyone. And when you call for that deeper healing, then it's like when Jesus can come in, he knows what is best for absolutely everyone. So then it is a blessing for the whole, and it's not some sort of like interpersonal thing that you're trying to get. You're actually blessing everyone and waking everybody up from the dream. So I think this shows this perfectly, actually. And that's what I saw in my seeming dream with my family. Is it's like, I actually remembered reading, I read a Ram Dass book, and in there he said, don't tell anybody who's not into spirituality about what you're doing, because they're going to bring a lot of doubt to you, and it's going to put you off of what you're actually doing. And I thought, that's pretty good advice, because I've been talking to people and they're saying, what are you into all that nonsense for? So I stopped doing it. And it was when I got really strong in my heart, you know, and like Jesus had like shown me pure unconditional love, and like my mind, there was just sort of like no turning back. Then really all of that doubting was completely and utterly ended, just like wiped out completely. So, you know, I find it funny when people talk about like, I've got these sort of family issues, and I was like, yeah, there is no issue there, because when you know deep down in your heart, like I knew, my family, none of them are into spirituality, none of them are interested in what I'm doing, and they think I've gone mad. Why on earth is he going to Mexico? He's doing all these crazy things now. What on earth is he up to? And it's just like, when I'm completely and utterly solid in my heart, that just spilt out to all of them, and that just completely and utterly ends all the doubting, and then they just all completely line up with you. Because it's the truth. So there's nothing that you can do. And that's what I saw, is like where I got to my mind, and I think like what George gets to in the movie, it's like, this is the most loving thing I could possibly do for my family, and yet alone the whole universe. So what am I doing waiting around? Let's move into action. And then, like, you know, the full blessing was given by everybody, and they're like, you've got to go. And I'm like, I know, because it's wonderful. And then you can share the joy. Then you can share the joy, and then they see the transformation in me, and then they just say, hey, I want to be happy, because that's truly what it's all about. And that's what George does. George, time's running out, so George needs to get on it and release the grievances to reveal the joy.
Yeah. And how many of you, during your childhood or your teen years, or maybe even in your adult life, when you thought of your family, you thought, this is an impossible situation. This is absolutely impossible. God, what did you... Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for this family. Yeah. And you know, you look at your family and you listen to their political beliefs and you go, unbelievable. And then you listen to their opinions about society and the world, and then about yourself. It's like, did I choose to be born in Expectationville? Is that what this cosmic joke's about? Parents, expectations, what you should be, to be a good boy and a good girl and grow up to be a good man and a good woman. And then it's like, is it like a time release capsule? Is this going to end after 10 years or 20 years? Do these expectations have an expiration date on them? Or do I have to continue living in this impossible situation of expectations? And then, Sharon, you start to realize maybe the problem's in my mind. Maybe I've been generating these expectations and they're just playing them out. Because when you're sitting there, you play the mom role, you play the dad role, I'll play the son role. You keep blaming me for this, and I'll blame you for that. And you say, well, I never asked for a son like this. Believe me, I didn't ask for parents like this. And then, you do this for a few decades or however long, and then you wonder, this is crazy. This is a comedy show? No, it's too painful to be a comedy show. And then you start to think, well, maybe this whole thing is a trick. Maybe there's some kind of ego that's playing all the characters and pointing all the fingers and blaming, and maybe there's never been a dysfunctional family. Maybe I just looked through it. I see AC there. AC and I have had some good conversations about her and her daughters. And AC's been thinking, yeah, there's some expectations there. We're talking some major expectations, but not anymore. Because now we're realizing, no, this is not how I'm going to heal. I have to let go of judgments. I have to follow what Jesus said 2,000 years ago. Judge not, lest you be judged. It's time for me to do it. So actually, sometimes they say, if you're going to a movie theater, they say, take your date out and go see a good date movie. You don't need to take your date to Nightmare on Elm Street or something like that. You may not get a second date if you take her to Nightmare on Elm Street. But I remember with this that I had just such a good feeling when this movie came out in 2001, and my dad was still living at that time, and my mother, and I said to him, let's go to the movies. And I took him to see this movie. And you know what? By the end of the movie, we were all just smiling at each other. There was some kind of recognition that we didn't really blame each other for anything, that somehow there's a greater force of healing that's lifting us higher and higher. And I remember watching it with them, and we left the movie theater and we were like looking at each other and just smiling like, wow, what happened? Like, wow, this was like a therapy session or something. Because if they can all pull out of this dark tailspin of an ego and rise up out of it, then it just shows that any of us can. Because it's really, we're all the same one. It's just our mind. We're the same mind. And as long as we believe in the ego, then that's where the drama comes in. And as soon as we decide to forgive, we are leaving Dramaville. Because we are leaving Expectationville too. Bye-bye. We're on the way to the light. And we're going to learn to laugh together and not take serious this ego. No, it was nobody's fault. Because the ego doesn't have a source. It's just a puff of nothingness. And as soon as we pull our minds away from it, the sooner we laugh. But as long as we take the ego seriously, then, like it says in the text, the consequences seem to be serious too. But when we remember to laugh, then we are truly healed. And it's amazing. Yeah. And Ken's told me so many stories of trips back to his family. And I've told people stories of my trips back to my family. And they're just the sweetest people now. When I quit judging, they turned into a bunch of sweeties. And isn't that amazing? After all the history that we seem to share, that they could turn around. It shows how powerful our mind is. When we give up the judgment, then they turn into the sweeties. Yeah. And they were like, same with mine. Can we get you something? Can we give you something? Ken went one time, they're giving him money. Yeah. He's like, what? No, I don't need anything. And they're just like, no, take it. I go back to visit. Can they fix you some food? Let's go out to eat. And what can we do to help you? all this offers of help from characters that I never would have believed it could happen, but it does. When you get into your function, they turn into sweetie pies. They bake you cookies, brownies with pecans. You get all these kind of sweet desserts and everything coming at you, and it's just you quit judging. That's all you've done.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just thinking, going back to Francis's teaching as well about the getting. That's the thing in the family, isn't it? I'm not getting what I want. And then, of course, everybody's doing it. I'm just not getting what I want from this relationship. And that's what I could see. That was my whole thing. And my shift was exactly the same, because Jesus turns around to me and says, yeah, well, the problem is you want to get and you don't want to give. So you've got to change your mind about what you're doing, because all this getting is your expectations. Your expectations aren't being met, and then this family is hopeless. And he said, turn it into giving. Because on one of the trips before I was going home, I'm like, I'm going to have this cooked for me. I'm going to get it. I can't wait for Mum's cooking. I want this. I want that. And there was me, and I'm going into all of these things that I want to get from them. And actually, Jesus delayed my flight. Which was the first time he's like, okay, hold on, we need to have a little rain check here. Flight delayed. I'm like, God damn it. So they end up putting me into a hotel. And that was thankfully. And I'm going to be flying the next day at like 5 o'clock in the evening. So I had all this time. And my Wi-Fi was terrible there. So I literally just had to be with myself. And I'm just praying and praying and praying. And that's when he came through. He said, hold on a minute. This was my trip. And you've all of a sudden flipped into, I'm going out for a curry. I'm going to be doing this. And it's not about that. You're here to give. You've learnt so much. I've shown you this deeper love. And this is for you to extend this love. This isn't a trip for you to be getting, because this is going to perpetuate the whole drama again. And I'm here to show you something new. And I'd been lucky because I'd been in a beautiful state of mind previous to this. And then I could come back and be like, yeah, you're right. I am here to give. And I'm just and I was remembering the Saint Clare of Assisi, where she said, I don't want to be loved. I want to love. And I thought, you're right. I'm going there to love them. I'm going there to share the good news. And so my mind completely shifted. Okay, back on with the flight then, here we go. And I go over and I land in England, and I mean, I just feel like I'm glowing, really. I don't even feel like I've done a 24 hours, probably longer, 48-hour trip now. I'm just in this state of being. And I turn around the corner and there's my dad there. And my dad, I'd class him as a man's man. He doesn't show his emotions or anything like that. He's just what we call a geezer, really. And I come round the corner, and I'm just completely beaming. I can feel this glow around me, and all of a sudden I turn around and I just lock directly onto him. I'm like, Dad, like that. I'm like really happy, and then all of a sudden, just a tear comes down his eye. But he's in front of everybody, so he's like trying to hold it in, and I'm like, it's all right, Dad, and I'm tapping him on the back. It's like, it's okay. And then I could just see there was like this softening in him, and I'm like, wow, what the hell's got into this man? I've very rarely seen him cry. And then when I saw my family, it was like the first time, really, it was like my closest to being the dreamer of the dream. It was like they were not the characters that I thought they were, and they were just radiating pure love. It was just like coming from them, and it was radiating towards me, and I'm just like, there's just so much love. Beaming. My dad was just like beaming with love, and it was like, how the hell has this happened? It's just completely and utterly transformed. And it wasn't until after the whole trip, it was like none of the drama could be played out whatsoever. It's like, I remember this one time, my mum knocked on my door, and because of the time difference, I was up late. It was about 11 o'clock in the morning, and it was Christmas. And Mum peers her head in. She went, oh, you're awake, are you? And I'm like, oh, you've only just woken up? I said, no, it's all right, Mum, come in. So she comes in, and she just wants to tell me about how everything's going wrong because it's Christmas, and Auntie Beryl's not turning up, and you know what it's like. And she just sat on my bed, and I'm like, this is the Christ. And my mind just snapped into like Christ mode, and I'm just looking at her, and she's literally sat there for half an hour, just like sharing with me exactly how she's feeling. And before, I'd be thinking, why the hell is she telling me all this? I just don't need this in my life. Like, what's this got to do with me? But it was like, I'm just in Christ mode, and I'm just like listening to her. And I listened to her for about half an hour, and I'm like, she is the Christ. And I'm just seeing her light up. And then right at the end of it, I have no clue what she said, but right at the end of it, she went, I feel so much better. Thank you so much. She gives me a big hug, and off she goes into her thing. And I'm like, oh, that was beautiful. So no one could play out their dramas any longer, because I just wasn't attached to being the son. I didn't care what happened. I didn't want anything from them. I just wanted to love them. And it's just, I'm in this dream with a dream, watching these characters just blaze in love at me. And I'm just like, this definitely wasn't the family that I left. I can assure you of that. So it can be a true, huge transformation in your mind. And that's exactly what this movie does too. Yeah. So I can say it's absolutely real.
Yeah. It's funny, it just takes a crisis for us to wake up. And in this movie, the main character, what's his name? George. George, basically, as soon as he's diagnosed with cancer, instead of focusing on his body, instead of focusing on his diet, instead of focusing on all the things that tell you to focus on with the cancer diagnosis, he immediately goes to heal all of his relationships. He goes to make peace with everyone in his life. That's how he handles a cancer diagnosis. Because Jesus teaches us we're all human beings are on the same level of teaching learning. There's nobody ahead, there's nobody behind. There's nobody more healthy, more sick. It's the mind that needs to be healed. So when George gets diagnosed with cancer, he makes a beeline to go toward the people that were the dearest people in his life. His ex-wife, even though she's remarried now to a guy named Peter, I think, they have 2 children, 2 little boys, but he goes right towards Peter. He goes right towards Robin, his ex-wife. He goes right towards his son. He goes right towards his neighbors. He goes right towards this house that's broken down and beaten down and worn out. And he goes into the opportunity to give. That's what to do with the cancer diagnosis, is give. Jesus is telling us, if you're sick, that's simply a call for love. And that call for love is coming from your mind. It's calling for a healed perception. It's calling out for connection. You know, he says in the Course, sickness is an attempt to make someone else feel guilty. And the way you flip it around is you go, I need help, and I need to connect. What's the first way you connect with people? Communication. Where there was blocked communication, you go right to it. When he goes to visit his angry teenage son, who is so angry that he's locked himself in his room with the music blasting as loud as he can, he's persistent. He's not going to be turned away by the anger. He's not going to run away from the anger. He's going to run towards the anger. He's going to dive in because he knows that there's a communication problem there. He has to give the love in his heart in order to find peace in his soul. So this is a teaching movie. This is a movie that's so practical. When you look around at your life right now, as it seems to be in this world, and you think, well, there's some communications isn't here, I've drifted apart from this one, we haven't spoken in years, I haven't seen this one, I've avoided this one for the last 10, 15, 20 years. That's where you have to go. You have to go where you avoided going, where you don't want to go. That's where you'll find this ego. You know, talk to that sister who's frightened and turned away. Talk to the ones, but as Ken's saying, go into your Christ mode first. Don't go there from the past. We talk about Wonder Woman. You put your Wonder Christ necklace bracelet on, and you get in there and shine your light, and you'll be surprised how quickly everything turns around with that family or with those relationships. But yeah, that's what we need. We need some good examples of that, and this movie's a real good example of that. Well, we better start the movie sooner or later, otherwise you guys may, you talked for 3 hours about this movie. Come on, give us the goods. Give us some goods here. So we'll pop in every once in a while when it gets too juicy for us to refrain. Okay. So, what do we know about hatred? Well, we know that when a mind falls asleep and takes on a false identity, it takes on the ego's emotions. And hatred is the ego's emotion. In fact, Jesus goes so far to say, this world was made in hate, he says in the Course. So when we think about the Big Bang, or we think about the Adam and Eve story, and God, creating the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day he rested. No. Jesus says the world was made in hatred. The world was made in hate. And George told his boss, his boss said, "You love your work," and he said, "No, I've hated it ever since the first day I got here." So there is a simmering hatred in the unconscious mind, and it's the ego's hatred of God. And you could say it projects the hatred out onto a job that is not liked, onto a divorce 10 years ago, onto no connection with your son, onto neighbors that only one he could barely tolerate, the woman that saw him in his underpants. The rest, he has hatred throughout his perception, and when he collapses there, which is from the cancer diagnosis, Jesus tells us in the Course that sickness is anger taken out upon the body. It's anger in the mind from the belief in separation, but it's taken out upon the body. So what we would describe as cancer, which is cells, eating away inside the body tissues and so forth, that's a pretty extreme example. That's actually a good example for us in our teaching movie of a lot of suppressed and repressed anger that hasn't been dealt with and then gets acted out in, I'd like to take home a few of my models. I've been working here since I'm 25, and they say, no, we can't own our work. And he saw it as a small request. And then you see him going through and destroying the models is just this hatred coming to the surface of the mind and then collapsing as he's walking out of the building with the cancer. So this is a good teaching example of how when you don't have a function, when you don't remember your function, then the mind goes into all kinds of ego emotions, hatred, anger, fear, guilt. And the only function that we have, I remember I talked about the context, in heaven it's creating, but in this world, the only reason you appear to even be here in this world is only for forgiveness. You're not here to be a good anything, good architect, a good designer, a good father, a good mother, a good partner. You're here for one reason, and that's to forgive the world. The only reason that you came is to forgive it. You didn't come to fix the world. You didn't come to change the world. You didn't even come to make the world a better place, like Michael Jackson's song, Heal the World, Make It a Better Place. You're not even here to make it a better place. You're only here to forgive it. That's your only purpose. That's the only purpose that you have every second of every day, is to forgive. And the sooner that we realize that that's the purpose, the quicker we are to let go of the hatred, the anger, the self-doubt, the self-criticism. Isabel, earlier today, you raised that anger, that you were feeling so much anger coming up, that even when a roommate says hi, you felt the rage and the anger coming up. And here we've got your movie for you. Jesus, of course, anybody who speaks up and exposes their main issue, then Jesus comes rushing in with the best movie to heal that, because keeping it inside doesn't release it. It's this pent-up, repressed emotions that are in the unconscious mind that are eating away in our mind, and therefore even the cancer is just a projection of guilt from the mind onto the body, where the ego is trying to hide itself again and displace it, so it seems like the body gets diagnosed with cancer, but it's the mind. The body suffers so that the mind will not see that it suffers. That's one of the lines that Francis shared several weeks ago on one of our retreats. The body suffers so that the mind does not recognize that it suffers. So the ego is quite ingenious with all these defense mechanisms, but basically, as soon as the hatred starts to rise up, it's best to pray and say, how am I to heal? In George's case, he didn't. On day one, he hated that job. But he stayed at it since he was 25, and now we don't even know how old he is now, but he has stayed at a job that he hates for decades. He has a wife who he described as she was very angry when they divorced, and now she's only hostile. She's improved. In 10 years, she's gone from very angry to hostile. This is a family. You can see the son, Sam, has a huge amount of anger. So I think we're watching this movie as with Isabel's call to transcend the anger. This is a whole orchestration of a whole movie and a whole weekend gathering to really answer that call. And let's take a close look at it, because unless it's exposed and looked at, then it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, because it's like the big trick, isn't it? The ego saying, I am you, and it's making it completely real. That's what was happening with Isabel. It's like, oh my God, I am this anger, I'm this terrible person, I'm thinking these terrible things over a fork in the sink, what the hell's up with me? Mm-hmm. And that's the same as what's happened with George. It's just one big, huge compromise, and the ego's going, George, you're worthless. This is the job for you. You stick at that. You're going nowhere. You do this architect stuff, you don't really like it, but let's face it, where are you going to go in your life? You're just worthless. And so he's obviously been believing this story. Your family's fallen apart. Your son doesn't even talk to you. You're no good at even being a father. So you can see in the background, he's just filled with hatred. He's failing in all of his areas. He feels like he's wasted his life on this job that he didn't even like in the first place. So one huge compromise in really not sharing his heart and sharing the true love in what he is, because the ego's saying, this is you, George. You're a failure, and he's not realising that underneath all of that he's actually the Christ, and that's been so hidden that he just can't see it. And that's with us all. We believe that we are the ego's I am you, and whatever it's going to do everything to keep its identity. And I am you, you failed, you're this, you're that. And you're like, yeah, I am this. And that's why now Jesus is like, no, this isn't you. No, this isn't you. And so with George, he's come to the end of his tether. And the last thing, okay, at least I can have a few gifts from all the hard work that I did. And the boss is like, yeah, well, George, to be honest, you were useless, so see you later. And now he's completely flipped his lid and he's smashing the whole place up because he's just one big, huge compromise.
Yeah. And, you know, we... even in these kind of situations and perceptions, you still can be grateful. You know, did you notice the dog? George does have a good relationship going there with his dog. You see, the dog sleeps with him. He lets the dog out to go to the bathroom. He goes out himself. The plumbing's broken in the house. The house is completely in disrepair. It's run down after these years. And that's like, even his house is a symbol of his mind. He hasn't put care and attention into his state of mind. Jesus says, beware of the shabby ego belief that neither you or anyone else is worth consistent effort. That is a very telling line from Jesus. It's the unworthiness. It's the feeling of feeling unworthy and all the anger and hatred that go with it. And then even his house is barely standing, even though it's overlooking this beautiful coastline in California. The house is falling apart. Windows, holes in the windows, the plumbing's breaking. But he's got his dog in his bed. There's his best friend. We say man's best friend. Even in that situation, he has something to be grateful for. But it also is calling for a turnaround in mind. This is a big cry for help. And as soon as we answer the call to heal, it's amazing how the witnesses and the symbols change. So we're in just for a major turnaround here. This is a major turnaround coming. So many subtleties to this movie, but you can see as he's just starting to disclose his thoughts, what he's thinking, what he's feeling, then his son Sam starts to open up, and his ex-wife even just hints that she's feeling things. Maybe she's not ready yet, but it's a beautiful, soft portrayal of how when you start to disclose what you're feeling and you start to be more transparent with what's going on inside your mind, then the witnesses start to reflect that. It's the beginnings of the very, very foothills of the mountain of communication. It's a whole mountain to go up where you start to share the love that you feel inside, but it starts with the tiniest little communications.
Yeah, and he's just realised that, he felt happy, and it's like, oh, the happiness is the most important thing, and he's gone back to what he's wanted to do, his dream of building this house, but he doesn't really realise what the whole thing's all about, and it's going to be bringing everyone together in a beautiful way and helping everyone find their way, as it has already. It's brought them closer together. So yeah, it's just very beautiful.
Even his son Sam says, so you weren't happy in 10 years. They haven't had a heart-to-heart conversation, just a little heart-to-heart exchange like that. And then when he's told Robin about, you weren't happy here, and she says, no, just the first year and the last year. And so he's curious, then why is that? So you can feel they're starting to talk about what's important to them. Whereas when you get into this feeling of darkness or despair or isolation or hatred or anger, then the communication the true communication is shut off. And then it's just talking about things, talking about blame or what could have been. It's the ego's misuse of communication to maintain the feeling of separation. And then the Spirit has to come in and gently start bringing the transparency in, talking from the heart. But it's beautiful, this movie. I love how it just shows it very slowly, how it's an evolution. It's a shift. It's a change in attitude, really. As soon as he has now decided that he's happy for the first time in years, then his son and his ex-wife start reflecting it back to him, just a little bit. Yeah.
And the next door girls turned up as well, which has kept Sam there, because he was like, I'm going to go. And so Jesus brings in, let's bring in this girl, and this is going to help because otherwise he's going to be off. Okay, this is going to help him and Dad be together for this healing thing. So it got him thinking, maybe there's some more things here, exciting things to happen for him.
Yeah, it goes from no way, I'm not spending the summer with you, and now, what's her name, Elisa, is sending in Elisa to make sure that he doesn't bolt. Yeah. He's part of the plan, part of the healing. So he sends in Elisa to make sure that, and Dad says, she's pretty, isn't she? There's all these little symbols.
Yeah, and like Sam, he's like really closed down, hasn't he? Because like when that Alicia was going towards him, he was like backing straight up, wasn't he? Yeah. With the suntan cream. And so he doesn't know, he hasn't learned like what's in his heart and how he really truly feels, because he's covering up through taking the drugs and whatever he's doing. And then she comes along and he's like, oh my God, how do I open up to this? But it felt more gentle than his sort of dad. And he was much more receptive, and he allowed her to put the cream on his back. So it's like this gentle sort of softening of him. And then she invited him out. Okay, he didn't go, but there's an invitation to start opening up a little bit more in his heart, rather than being fixated on his error in his mind.
Yep. Little communications. Do you remember me?
Yeah.
From when you used to live here? Your dad dated my mother when they got she got divorced. I was hoping he'd marry her. Interesting little communications. You don't miss a thing. Yeah. Every little teeny communication is part of a warming up, part of the heart opening up, starting to really feel connection, because he's been into drugs, isolation, and he's even, one guy was trying to have him work for this other guy, Josh, as a pimp, and in drugs, and but when people are lost, when the mind is lost, it goes and gets involved in all kinds of things, and it just feels isolated and separated, and now you can see the little sprinkles. It's like when you get an ice cream cone, like Creamy Whip, and you get those little sprinklies on. Jesus is just throwing in lots of little sprinklies here. Like, we can turn this around. Yeah. We can turn it around.
It's like the little changes of perception, because it's like his perception of his dad was this hatred and they're not getting on. And then Alicia comes along and says, I hope they sort of stayed together. And he's thinking, well, she sees something different in my dad than what I'm seeing right now. And it's just a little flick in the switch of like, maybe my perception's a bit different. Maybe he's not what I'm interpreting. So as you said, it's just little fine little steps that are slowly changing the mind.
Yeah. And the ocean memory, when he's out there, when Sam is 6 years old, and he's holding him out in the ocean, and he can feel his heart beating, and he feels this memory. It comes back to him, this memory when he felt such love and such connection with his son. And somewhere underneath, that's why even when his son was angry, even when his son wouldn't even consider spending the summer with him, he has a memory. There's a deep memory inside of all this love, and he's just opening his heart to be willing to say, you're coming with me, even if you hate me. He basically, his ex-wife, you can hate me, and to his son Sam, you can hate me, and then the little boy, the other son, Says, can I hate you? You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
He's so determined to connect after that cancer diagnosis, and after he's been told he has 4 months to live. That's what it took for him to finally say, what's it all about? Why am I here? What's the purpose of life? He seemed to have gotten into a job that he hates and drifted way off into hatred and isolation. But now he's just with this cancer diagnosis and told you have 4 months to live. That lit a fire in his mind. And now he's going for it. And it seems like that's what it sometimes takes for us. It takes some extreme feelings, some very extreme, intense feelings before we start to, it shakes us up a little bit. Like, what am I here for? What's the purpose? Yeah.
And I was just thinking that also Sam was sat on the swings when his mum and dad was talking, and he's sort of pretending that he's not listening, but he actually did listen in. Because then he says, oh, you haven't been happy. So it was like he does want the connection, and he's obviously listening, because if he wasn't bothered, he wouldn't be listening in, but he was. There's a part of him that is listening, and it's like, oh, you actually do want this, but you're pretending that he doesn't want the connection. So he gave himself away a little bit there.
Yeah, he's not used to seeing his mom and dad together. So when they do have one conversation, he may be over there with the dog, but he's paying attention because deep down inside, he has memories of happier times, of times when his mom and dad were together, when they felt more like a family. You know, it's kind of symbolic of how none of us can forget heaven. We may load our mind full of all kinds of other false memories, and we may load our mind with all kinds of dramas and conflicts and distractions, but somewhere deep inside we must have a memory of heaven. We must have a memory of love that won't go away. And now, we're watching a movie online, we're reading this blue book, Course in Miracles, you know, things are cooking. Things are cooking. Okay, here we go. We'll keep going. Okay. Remember when George went to the hospital and he was touched by the nurse, and he asked her, what would you do if you had 4 months left to live? And she said, I'd eat lots of red meat. And he said, I want to build a house. And she said, oh, you think you can do that in 4 months? And he said, well, I would die trying. You see, the miracle, it doesn't have to do necessarily with the body's condition. So he's received the diagnosis of cancer. He's been told he has 4 months to live, and he wants to build a house. Not just build it, to tear down the old and build something brand new. And this is kind of very symbolic of the mind. Like Jesus knows that we've been really invested in the past. We've put so much care and effort and attention to the past. We've used our mind's energy and our attention focused on the past. And in one sense, when he and his son, Sam, are just pounding down and tearing down the house and he's talking about what his father, you know, how his father was, and they both have gone through such horrific times with the past. And in one sense, you have to knock it down. And you also notice he is not even disclosing to anybody his cancer diagnosis. He is not really drawing attention to the body at all. He's got something inside of him that needs to expand, that needs to grow, that needs to open. He needs to connect. He needs to open his heart. And he's putting his attention toward that. So what Jesus tells us in the Course is, he says, revelation unites you temporarily directly with God. That's that blazing light experience. And he even tells us it only goes one direction. It comes from God to you. It does not go from you to God. God has to give. Francis was talking about that last night. God has to give love because God is love. And so revelation is God's showering of love and light directly on you when you're ready to receive it. Not many people are ready for that one. But this is a rare thing. Alan Shuckman had it. I've had a few, but this is not your commonplace thing. However, miracles unite you directly with your brother, directly with your sister. That's what's happening here. He's not even focusing attention on the diagnosis. He hasn't even mentioned the diagnosis to his ex-wife, to his son, to anyone, but every day he looks out on the sun in the Pacific sunrise and sunset. He gets up there to tear down the past and knock away what's past and gone and prepare to let something new come through him. Even though he's been told he only has 4 months, he's giving his whole heart. And this is what the miracle does. It opens you up to unite you directly with your brothers and your sisters. Now, his ex-wife, Robin, wants to hang around him more and more instead of her own house. Now she's brought the kids over. Now she's told the kids they wanted to help out. She says they wanted to help out. I hope it's okay. I told them they could. You can see the neighbors are coming. Elisa, her mother, you can feel how the miracle is starting to transform the mind. And Jesus says, miracles unite you with your brother. So he says personal closeness does not do this. It's actually in the mind. It's your purpose in your mind that brings the healing. He says physical closeness is sometimes sought for as an attempt to regain creativity of spirit. Really, the mind's yearning for this deep intimacy of love and light that it had with God. And it's sometimes sought for in personal relationships, but he comes right out, Jesus says, that won't do it. Personal closeness will not do it. The ego has set up special relationships to try to have us achieve something that cannot be achieved through those means. But miracles, that's why Jesus is calling us to be miracle workers. Mm-hmm. He's not calling us into anything else, but to let our mind be used by Him and by the Holy Spirit to share these miracles. And he says miracles save thousands of years. Imagine saving yourself thousands of years of learning with the miracle, collapsing time, bringing you closer to the end of time, bringing the Alpha and the Omega together as Jesus was. I am the Alpha, I am the Omega. Yeah, he knows what he's talking about. In him there is no beginning and end. Why? Eternity doesn't ever have a start or a finish. And Jesus is an eternal being. But he's calling us to the most important calling that there could ever be. And that's working miracles. And we actually have an instruction manual. Unbelievable. We have an instruction manual in miracles to collapse time and take us back directly to the source, to the true intimacy that we've longed for, to the true continuity that we've longed for, which is eternity. And he's giving us step-by-step instructions. 1 workbook lesson a day. Amazing. A text that makes the workbook lessons more meaningful. Even a manual for teachers. If you really get into it, like us, where we've been swept up away, we have no choice. We've been taken off now as teachers of God, as miracle workers. We can't fight the feeling anymore. We've forgotten what we've started fighting for. It's time to bring the ship into the shore and throw away the oars forever. We're tired of rowing on time and space. We're tired of going down dead ends. We're tired of trying to bring about intimacy through false pursuits. It's the miracle. That's why he calls it a course in miracles, because Jesus is giving us a direct pathway to happiness, to joy, from the teacher of joy, the Holy Spirit. So I love this movie because you can see how far it's come from just the start. At the beginning, everybody's screaming at each other. They're screaming. They're bashing models. They're falling to the ground. They're trying to hang themselves in the closet on a plastic rod and sniff. You know, it's a death wish at the beginning of this movie. I mean, everybody is either angry or screaming or trying to kill themselves, or diagnosed with cancer. You know, it's a mess. But look at it now. Maybe we're even halfway through the movie, and the house is now, the boards are getting in there, and they're all showing up. They're showing up, and you can tell that this is the Spirit when you start to call forth witnesses for joining. The little boys are loving to see Sam. They're hugging him on his knees. Robin, she wants to spend her day. She doesn't want to be off at her suburban house with the microwave oven and everything. Her husband's not even there. She's getting vibrationally called back into the love through her ex-husband and his project of building a house. At first she's like, yeah, you've been talking about finishing that house since we were dating. And now, 4 months to live, and he is going for it. He is not going to be stopped. So that's what we're called upon to do. We have to really take this on seriously, sincerely. You know, if this course is calling us to be a miracle worker, you can't be sarcastic and go, ha ha, me, a miracle worker, ha ha, that's a joke. No, it's not a joke. It's actually part of a prearranged plan. And he says in there, in the first 50 principles of miracles, you can heal the sick and raise the dead because you made sickness and death and can abolish them both. Oh, listen, this is a divine voice that's speaking here. This is no joke at all. I had a raising the dead experience, and it was when I was doing one of the lessons, there is no death, the Son of God is free. I had a raising the dead experience, like Jesus had 2,000 years ago. I was like, man, this is like deep stuff. This is not messing around here. But that's why we're showing this movie, because you can feel it happening. You can see the witnesses starting to shift from the darkness, and now it's starting to open up. And it's not even near to where it's going, but it's actually it's on the way with this. They want to be there. Yeah. Everybody who's there wants to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like conflict breeds conflict, and they were just stuck in the conflict, and now all of a sudden he's the light. He's just like, he's following his dream. He's like, this is what I want to do, and he doesn't realise that he is the light, and that is beaming from him, and now everyone is attracted to this light, and then through that, like, the healing can take place. Like with Sam, you know, you haven't been there since I was 12 years old, and he's like, I'm really sorry about that. I'm here now. And then George has been sharing how he'd been feeling, and he doesn't want to repeat the past, and so down comes the house, and it's like they both had this anger underneath. So Jesus has said, hey, why don't you bash this house down? This is a much safer way of healing. And they're bashing away at the past, and now finally Sam's got involved. He's letting go of that energy. He's lightening up. He's going across the road for a shower. He's getting a bit more comfortable in this joining. And as you said, now the kids are coming, but it's not the personal, it's the light. Everybody's attracted to the light. Yeah. So when one starts moving towards the light, everybody just naturally, like moths to the flame, aren't we? We're just, okay, I want to move towards that. And the conflict is just disappearing on its own. Yeah. There's nothing you don't have to get involved in the conflict, just move towards the light.
Yeah. Imagine that you have such a powerful mind that it's no big deal to move mountains with this mind, because you're moving the spheres, you're moving the planets, you're moving the stars, you're moving the galaxies with that mind. That mind is that powerful. It's not a human little brain thing. It's a very powerful mind. And if love is your motive, you can feel the love is underneath this. If fear was underneath this, he would have told his ex-wife, I've got 4 months to live with cancer, and he would have tried to put together what? The biggest 4-month pity party that he could. Oh, I'm dying. As a last request, can you come and see me and everything? He hasn't even mentioned the cancer because love is underneath this. He's actually there to connect. He's there to communicate. He's there to heal. And only love can do this. This is not fear driving this. This is not fear of consequences. He doesn't look to me like a desperate man who is desperately trying to squeeze out 4 months. He looks like someone who has been given a new lease on life, who felt happiness for the first time in 10 years, and then he's like, I'm going with it. I'm going to follow where this love is going to take me, where it's going to lead me. So this is very powerful because the main message here is, what's your motive? When you get out of bed in the morning, what's your motive? Are you here to love? Are you here to give, like Francis was talking about? Are you here to shine the light? Are you here to be the light of the world and to let that light just burst through you, in all kinds of small ways, the kindness, tiny acts of kindness all throughout the day. How can I help? How can I help? How can I help? The love will lift you higher and higher, and you can tell this is not out of fear. Yeah. He's not even mentioned it once. He has his times where he is having trouble moving. He has his times where he feels like he's ready to be thrown down to the ground. Yeah. But he still got his focus on his purpose, on his mission, and it's really through this house. He's not trying to ask for sympathy in any way. Even his son said, why don't you just ask my dad, the stepdad, for money? And he's like, I don't beg. I don't beg. If you're into giving, you're not a beggar. You've got so much to give, you just want to give it away. You want to use every second of every day to give your light away. You're not going around begging for help. It's coming from inside. So, wow, we're just starting to heat up here. It's like now we haven't got to the boiling point yet. We just got, the kettle is on the stove, and we're starting to get some flames going here.
Yeah, it's like where you put your attention. That's exactly where it is. Like you just said, and that was exactly what happened to me last night. It's like I'm sitting there, and I had this beautiful conversation with Jesus. And I can relate to Isabel because anger's been my thing, seemingly the curse of anger. And it's like, okay, how do I really deal with this? I've asked the same questions as you asked. How do I deal with this? And it's been bit by bit by bit, gradually. And then last night, as I was sat after the session, Jesus was just telling me, listen, you keep fixating on the past and regurgitating your story, and then that is working you up into that you are this angry person. And he said, and you are not allowing me to fulfill you, right? And with me fulfilling you, this is going to start taking over your mind and your mind more, rather than you keep running down this same track, which is keeping you caught in the loop. And so just stay with me and keep allowing me to fulfill you, and this is actually what's going to dispel this idea, because you're not going to do it on a personal level, but just allow me to be your inspiration. And so it's been funny, because then the next thing he said is like, for this year he's been saying, yeah, you need to write. And it's like, I was the bottom in class for everything. I was like, here's the stupid ones turned up. The teachers would be like, in my class, they'd be like, stand up. And I'd stand up in the class and they go, this is how you don't do it. And I was like, all my shame and hatred was coming at me. He's the idiot. Look what this idiot done again. He's been messing around. He's done this. I'm like, okay, I'm just so useless at this. Like, he can't even write. He can't do this. He can't do that. He's going to be a nothing. So that was my thing. And so I've just shunned away from like writing and stuff. And then Jesus last night said something so beautiful to me. And he said, you're actually quite good at the other things. You can do the speaking and everything like that. He said, but where you haven't believed in the writing, I can actually contact you better because you haven't got so many ideas there. So I want you to write because I can actually contact you that way. And this is what's going to wash it away. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? I never saw this coming. And so he's getting me to write down all of his words with him. And he says, I know you like psychotherapy, so I'm going to do it in a psychological way so you can like understand much better forgive me, in a joyful way. So I can understand and let go of basically all this anger. So I'm saying like, wow, this writing and everything like this is to show me something new about myself. But that would have been so far from the other way of what I saw, because this is what's going to fulfill me with the light. And I'm just like, this plan is unbelievable.
Yeah. That works the best with all of us. When you have no preconceived notions, you don't have a clue. Like when we showed up to do that show on, Thursday. Then we were both toed blank. The cat walks in, and we have no clue what's going on. And then that's when Jesus can use you the best. Yeah. When you have no preconceived notion from the past of how you can be used. And yet you're willing, like Kenneth is saying, he's so willing to even allow Jesus to use something that he does not relate to, writing. Ken's like, I'm no writer. Jesus is like, I know, I'm writing it. Just get your fingers ready. You supply the fingers. I'll give you the motions and the words. And that's the way that it works. It's not you don't have to have a resume to work for Jesus. In fact, if you have a resume, that's worse. He had me delete my resume immediately after I started working with him. He said, delete that resume. It will be no longer useful for you. I have other plans. And isn't that what we're doing? And isn't that what George is doing? George is no builder, and yet he is having He's making me a mountain, making me a mountain. Yeah, he's growing in strength every day just through his willingness to let Jesus build a house. Let Jesus build a house for you. If George can do it with a house, we can do it too. We can do it in our own ways. Okay, you can see in the eye glances here that now they've gone from the hiding phase to now they're really starting to open up what's going on inside. So much so that George has opened up with Robin and let her know about her cancer now. And their son Sam comes in on them and then sees her face. And this is where the communication just goes deeper and deeper, because just when you get in the habit of not hiding anything, just when you get in the habit of not holding on to secrets, just when you get in the habit of being into full disclosure, which is important because it takes a lot of mind energy to hide and protect things, then the Spirit will take you even deeper. You can see in that Sam saw that on his mother's face. So now that's going to open up a deeper conversation between Sam and his dad. And that's just the way the healing goes. You start off with a willingness to communicate. And we heard a little bit about this on Friday night session, about communicating with a sister, with a family member, and then even when you go over that uncomfortable feeling, which is based on how will they react or what will they think, those are the kind of ego concerns and ideas around fear of transparency. But it does continue, and it keeps going. And basically the reason there's such a hesitancy with opening up and being transparent is because the ego has convinced the sleeping mind that if you don't hide your private thoughts, if you expose your private thoughts, you will be abandoned, and you'll be rejected, and you'll be left. And that's why people close up. That's why people stop communicating. That's why people isolate. It's out of fear. It's a fear of abandonment and rejection. And yet, if you are willing to do it for the purpose of disclosure and letting it go, it turns everything around towards the healing. And so the very thing you were most afraid to do, the very things you were most afraid to show, actually are used by the Spirit to free your mind of those thoughts and those emotions. So it's why the very thing that seems to be the thing that is most feared, open, direct communication, which is really what the fear of intimacy is, fear of open, direct communication, is actually the thing that kind of communication will set you free, will set your mind free forever. And when you do speak from your heart, and you really let the Spirit put the words in your mouth and speak it, sometimes people do leave. They actually leave. And Francis addressed this a little bit on Friday night, that as you become more in line with Spirit and more authentic, there's certain symbols that will fall away from your awareness. Don't cry. Don't be sad. This is just how the witnesses change. If you can be authentically what you feel in your heart, you will draw forth witnesses to the love in your heart. But you can't be the decider of who those witnesses are. You have to open up and then let Spirit bring the witnesses. And this is what I call vibrational family. This is a frequency family. It's a family of the heart. It's a family of your deep desire to wake up and know God. And then you start calling forth the witnesses in awareness to this. And then some witnesses just fade away or disappear. They serve their purpose, and your mind's making room for more witnesses. I know, I was very shy. I could count my close friends. When I was in high school, I could count them easily on one hand. Now, I would need quite a few hands to talk about my friends around the world, because there's so many. But it was a time when I would go, oh, yeah, okay, and my dog, Chipper. But that's the way it works. You start to open up, and then you call forth witnesses to your vibrational frequency. In the Course in Miracles, Jesus says, the willingness to communicate attracts communication. So look at us. How many people we have here? We don't even know.
Over 200, I think.
Over 200 people. We're all together watching a movie together, talking about the love in our hearts, and this is an example of what I'm talking about. And you can see it in the movie with George. At first George said he couldn't even remember he hasn't been touched in years, he told the nurse when she touched him. And now the hugs are everywhere. Mm-hmm. He's going around, he's getting hugged and offering hugs, and you can feel it's a vibrational thing. It's the Spirit doing it. It's not something that George had planned out, but he's really opening his heart. Oh, that says it all. That says it all. Oh, so sweet. So precious. Yeah. Listening. That's where it ends. Listening. It's pointing us to our inner listening. Yeah. That was interesting because a couple of days ago we were brought together and we ended up talking about the deathless state without knowing what we were doing. But that's really what that was in the end. It was very transcendent. Yeah, way beyond death. So it starts off with all these anger issues to heal, and then the healing goes so far beyond persons, beyond time. Yeah. It's just so precious. Yeah. So you're very dear. Well, I'd be interested to see what everyone's feeling. I would love to share some interactions with you. I heard during lunch that there was lots of hands up this morning, so we couldn't get to them all. And tomorrow, of course, we'll do our best to get to as many of you as possible. But yeah, that's very touching. Yeah. We had our Kleenex boxes. We keep Kleenex in business here. Sammy's in the back row, pulling those Kleenexes out, and the front row. So you can feel the healing energy of it all. It's so beautiful. Oh, so sweet. So, Pete, how are we looking? Do we have any Kleenexes out there? We're all
They're just starting. Yeah, I just mentioned too that we will have our translators translate you, so please just speak at a moderate pace and just speak to the heart of what you want to share. We have Jean. Jean, you can unmute there.
Hi, Jean.
Hi, Jean.
I've just had the most amazing day, and this movie just fit perfectly. Like, it just all feels so like such a gift today, and I just wanted to share that. I this morning, the minute I got up, the first thing I saw, I was watching Francis, and it was really speaking to me, and I suddenly picked up my phone and looked on Facebook, and there was somebody had posted about her fears of having a heart attack. And I've been having fears for the past couple months of I'm going to have a heart attack, I'm going to have a stroke, and then it was I'm going to have cancer, and then it was, I mean, I was like, God, I'm in this huge hypochondria right now, and it was all this guilt because I smoke, and like I haven't been able to breathe lately, and so there was just all this body stuff going on, and then I was just praying all day. I mean, it was a great day because it was horrible. And weird things kept happening. My heater's not working. I had to keep lighting the fire. And then during the movie, my freezer just started making all these huge noises. So I didn't have heat, and then I didn't have the freezer. In the middle of the movie, I had to like take out a screwdriver and like hacking ice away just to get it going again. It was just, my house was like exploding. And then this movie I was like living the movie like this whole day, and it just all came to me. And this, my fear, not even of death, but of sickness, how I was just projecting it all onto that idea of suffering and what it's going to be like to die, and it's like every week, the past few weeks, all the retreats, the movies, everything just kind of like, oh, it all just clicked in, like where I put my attention and why, like, hey, why am I putting my attention on these sickness ideas? It just all whooshed through me with this movie and was like the the final exam or something, like all these weeks with the movies and then the celebration where for the whole week I was so in function or attending the celebration that I didn't notice that I couldn't breathe. Like, oh, wait, when I'm not paying attention to it, I can breathe fine. It's when I start focusing on it that I start feeling like I can't breathe and my chest gets heavy and all the symptoms come in. And just this week showed me if I'm not putting my attention there, it's not there. And just, it's like today was the final exam and I took my test and my house kind of went crazy around me. And I've always been very focused on my house. Like it is me, and I'm very obsessive about it, and that's where I put all my attention. So Spirit, whoop, here you go, the perfect movie from my two angels, David and Ken, who get me through everything, and all perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you. It's so interesting how Jesus has to use whatever we put our attention to. So for some people I know, they've had so many issues around money. They say extreme issues around money, or if they put a lot of attention on their body, then they get these all kinds of extreme things that come with the body. Some people do it with their houses, and if you could write a book on all the crazy things that happen with houses when we put our attention to them, and for me, it was also cars. I could write a whole thick book on car stories, getting cars, having cars smashed up, going through a big deal to get a car and get it fixed, and then a friend of mine taking it out the next day and it's totaled. One time getting a car worked on with mechanics for, I think it was weeks or months, it was a foreign car, ordering parts and everything like this. And the mechanics came to deliver it, but they parked it out on the street instead of pulling it into the driveway. And it didn't have any license plates on. So after like months of working on this car, it got impounded and taken away. So, the Spirit can use anything. And I think that's what you're saying with the focus on the body and the focus on the house, then the Spirit will use those symbols to help us unwind from the ego, because we believe so much in them. We give more meaning to a body than it needs. We give more meaning to a house than it needs. And Jesus is like, okay, I can see which symbols I'm going to work with you. And it seems to be that's the way. Even with relationships, we always are given relationships that sometimes it seems pretty extreme, but it definitely helps us get the lesson, which is always forgiveness. It's always the same lesson, regardless of what it is. But thank you so much for sharing that. I got your message too on Facebook, and I could feel you were going through a real intense day. So it sounds like today was the final exam and you made it through. We're all here with you, cheering you on as you made it through the final exam. You graduating. It's sweet.
Love you, Jean.
Yeah, we love you.
Thanks, Jean. Next, we can go to Angie. You can unmute.
Hi, David. Hi, Ken.
Hi.
Thank you. Thank you for this wonderful week. I've tuned in every day, and it's been really healing for me. Earlier today, it kind of struck a chord with me when you were talking about the financial advisor. And the reason that struck a chord is that's a field I've gone into. Been in that field for a year and studied for a year before that. And I do believe that I looked for guidance through that process if I should keep going into that field. But I wasn't the Course in Miracles student at that time. And so I feel like there's a lot of ego and doubt around if I'm in the right place and how to navigate that industry when it is so focused on the past and the future. And so just looking for a little bit of guidance on being a new student and kind of wrestling with, did I make the decision? I do believe deep down that I made a decision where I can be there to help people. And I say that because God has put a lot of people in my path where maybe I'm not making any salary from helping them, but I see a need for there to be people that are spiritually minded in this field. And I do believe that that's why I'm meant to be there. But I do struggle a lot with the worldly side of goals and expectations because that's not where my heart is. And so I've probably just recently begun the process of asking Spirit for guidance. And so I didn't know if you had any advice on that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that line at the end of the movie where Sam said, I guess everything happens for a reason. Yeah. Even him taking his pants off in a car was used for a greater purpose. And that just is a prime example of how the Spirit can use anything. And I know you enjoyed Francis's talk last night. Francis worked in financial management, and she was so good that she started her own company. So she had her own financial management company. And she had a couple houses, and she was married, and there's so many things, a part of the script that we go through. And really, it's a loosening slowly, ever so slowly, of our identification with the self-concept of the whole world to open up to forgiveness, which is the final self-concept. It's still a concept, but it's so vast. It includes everyone and everything in that final self-concept, where it's like a blanket of peace goes over all of perception. But, Frances had a vision to make a movie, even though she's not a movie maker. And it's what Ken was talking about, how it's the best when you're asked to do something you know nothing about. And, of course, Ken is now writing, and Frances made a documentary. And then actually there was a time not too long ago where we had a lot of things going on with details in our global ministry and with Mexico and a lot of things regarding attentiveness and the finances with the ministry. And I remember going and visiting Frances in her casita, and I said, well, the movie's done now. And she said, yeah. Wow, that was amazing. The movie is done, and Jesus had his own distribution plan too. We applied to, 10, 12, 15 film festivals, zero, nada on that. Okay. But then Francis's financial skills and attentiveness with going through Excel spreadsheets with Susan and all those things that Frances had skills on from years ago when she had her own company and from when she'd worked in financial management, they all came out again as she went through like a sleuth, like Sherlock Holmes, went through all the Excel sheets and everything. And so you just never know. I mean, as we go along, there are always things that just come through us in such a a natural way, and the Spirit always uses it just for our mind training and attentiveness. And so there's so many little steps that we take in great earnestness and great sincerity as we just go forward, not understanding what things mean or what their purposes in form, but knowing that it's all for forgiveness, for like rinsing the mind. Like the ego is like a stain, and Jesus is running us through the rinse cycle hundreds and thousands of times, and he's always laughing, going, "Did you get it? Try this. A little more rinsing. Get a fire hose in there. Let's crank it up here." And it's just a rinse, and it's a rinse, and then again, once again, another rinse. Like the Bill Withers song, "You just keep on using me until you use me up," until the personality self is completely merged and taken up into light. So I don't think you have to put too much concern in this. This is something you were clearly drawn into, and it's Jesus that drew you in. And if you're at some point you outgrow it or you're drawn into something else, I think that will be made very obvious. And you can just rejoice like we do, like Ken is. Ken's writing now. It's the last thing on earth
God, yeah.
that he thought he'd be doing. But Jesus, always has some fun,
He does.
with these things. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun, whatever it is. Thank you.
Okay, next we can go to Jacqueline. You can unmute there.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Okay. Hi.
Jacqueline.
Yeah. Oh, good. I couldn't see you at first, and I wondered, talking to you, but looking at Peter, which is, I guess, okay. But so I'm not sure what I'm going to say, but I felt compelled to speak because for the first time during one of the movies, I actually cried and cried and cried and cried and cried. And I've been kind of waiting for this to happen because I felt like somehow there was this, I don't know, just something that didn't feel right because, I felt like it was somehow, it just felt like such a loosening, like you were saying, a rinsing. And while I was crying, I just felt so much love and forgiveness for the world. I just thought, yeah, it's like we just do the best we can, and then because we think we are really here. And I'm just so glad that we're not bodies. I'm so glad that we can, just be spirit and mind. But maybe that's all. But I did want to say that I did say a prayer. I felt this very strong prayer to open myself up and allow myself to be used for miracles in any way that Spirit wants to use me, and to not, to let go of any thoughts I might have about that, because, judgments, you can't judge where you're being asked to go or what you're being asked to say. So anyway, I think that's it. I hope I didn't speak too fast. But I just wanted to send that prayer out there just to allow me to follow guidance.
Yeah.
With all my brothers too. I don't want to be alone. I want to be with everyone, just following guidance. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Beautiful.
Okay, next we can go to Solveig. You can unmute.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi,
Hi,
Solveig.
Solveig.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
I feel it's difficult to put words together into a sentence at the moment, but you just talked about this cleansing and feeling the joy of that, and then feeling this, like today, like suddenly falling into a black ego hole. And I think I just feel to share that for me it's this new thing of falling into these holes, to actually reach out, express myself. I wanted to share my prayer Friday night with Francis, and I couldn't, and sent it after I think in a mail, and this, I think that's what touched me in the movie too, feeling this really stuck, and no matter what I do in form, it's wrong. It's it's if I do this, it's wrong. If I do that, it's just, I'm so really criticizing and having this voice saying, no, you can't do that. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. And having like nowhere, it's no way out. It's a dead end. And then actually having this and mighty companionship, connecting with Peter today, and having this, it might sound crazy being in a hole, but having this, actually finding a way out. A way out, not in form, but in just trying to put words on it, even if I can't. And having, all the sessions, everything is just for me. All of it is for me. It's it really, such a gift.
Yeah. That's beautiful, Solveig. I'm just happy you could share it with us. I mean, that's the gift right there. Just to be, hi everyone, I fell in a hole today. It starts to bring a lightness to it. It starts to take the heaviness away, and that's what we saw in the movie. At the beginning, they just didn't have any communication, but slowly they were able to say. I mean, Robin character, basically her ex-husband or her husband comes to the door, and she calmly says, I fell in love with George again. Just very matter-of-factly. It can be that anything. I fell in a hole. I fell in love with George again. There's something light about free-flowing communication where you feel you can be transparent and be loved with whatever comes out of your mouth. And that's what we saw in the movie, and that's what you're doing now too. So that's fantastic. I mean, I even laugh now when I listen to a lot of songs that I listen to. I thought they were just writing down lyrics, but it was just an expression session. The whole song was basically just an expression session. Like one was called I Shot the Sheriff. I'm like, I shot the sheriff, but I did not shoot the deputy. I mean, that's got to be an expression. Who writes a song like that? And then it made it up in the charts. People are listening to it. Okay. Well, there has to be some kind of lightness to not take anything in the world so serious and not take ourselves serious. And I see that that's what you're doing. You're learning not to take yourself in a critical way, and you're learning to expose whatever the thoughts are, as silly as they are, so that you can feel lighter about yourself and everyone. Yeah, so thank you. That's what Mighty Companions are for. Thank you.
Okay, next we can go to Laura. You can unmute.
Hi.
Hi.
I want to share a miracle. When the father died of cancer, I started to cry, and I'm going to start crying now, but that's okay. And the miracle was that I started to go down the same path of shame and guilt and, why am I crying? And then I caught myself and I was like, no, this is just a story. The crying doesn't have to mean those things. It doesn't have to mean sadness. It doesn't, just so you have a little background, my father recently died of cancer a few months ago. So I started to go into that story again. And I was like, no, it doesn't have to mean that. It's a projection. So I started to go into some of the things that were said in the retreat today in my mind. And then I was like, yeah, it can be joyous. It can be cleansing. It can be healing. It can be awesome. So, I'm like tingling right now. I just started to feel really happy about it all. And then when David got on and was crying too, I was like, yeah. And then all these other people talked about cleansing, and I was like, they're witnesses. And my fingertips are like totally tingling. It's crazy. Woo! So yeah, it's the meaning you give it, and I can give it a different meaning. So it was just wonderful to feel that. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Thank you. That's such a blessing.
Yeah, I think that's been a beautiful lesson for me too, is just to feel exactly what you're feeling without the meaning. And I saw that in myself. It's like I might be feeling grumpy or whatever and not seemingly in a good mood. And it's like, the ego says, well, that's not good. And it's like, well, that's what's happening, rather than me trying to change it. It's just like, well, this is just what's occurring. And I don't even have to judge that. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to do this. I don't have to judge what's seemingly occurring. And then actual fact, that's I found that much, much more healing. Whereas the other way is, okay, what's wrong with me? Okay, it's because you're miserable. It's because you're grumpy. You don't want to be around people. And, just this old story. And it's just like, yeah, okay, I'm grumpy. Like, what does it really matter? It doesn't really matter, does it? It's just like, okay, that's where I'm at. I'm not prepared to just change it because I'm going to people please or whatever. This is the state that I'm seemingly appearing in right now. I don't have to judge it whether it's right or wrong. This is just what's happening. Jesus, when you're ready to lift it, you can lift it when you're ready. It's over to you. And then it feels much, much lighter, rather than there's a problem, I'm crying, why am I crying? This is shame and all of this business. It's just really observing it. And I've seen that that's been a much, much richer, greater healing, because I've actually gone towards it, like what we were talking about. It's just, I'm allowing the grumpiness to be there, because it's always the ego's moving away. Don't look at it, because you'll dispel it. And it's like, well, okay, I'm grumpy. I'm just going to be grumpy, and it will lift itself. And that's what the ego hates, that, because you're not then getting into its realm of trying to analyze itself. You're just seeing it, and once you've truly seen it, it's over. Thank you.
Okay, well, just to let you know, David, we're coming near the top of the hour and we have about 5 hands here. How are you feeling?
Well, we're on a roll here. I think we might as well. We've still got some Kleenex left here. So.
Yep.
Okay. Well, next we can go to Monica. You can unmute there.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Monica.
Hi, Monica.
So I was someone who was asking for prayer last night with Francis, and I was crying and talking about all of the characters in my dream that have just poof disappeared within the year, with my mother dying, my grandmother dying. My family's decided to reject my daughter and myself. And then my husband walks out a couple weeks ago. And the only character I have left is my daughter and my dog and my cat. And I was really feeling very, Frances put her finger on it, disoriented. And I remembered when she spoke of it last night in the manual, how it says when, things just start to go when they're not needed anymore, and it can happen pretty quickly. And when I got out all those tears last night, I started to feel a lightness. And what came to mind was there's I'm going to totally mess up this story, but there's a story in the Bible where I think Jesus goes to his hometown, or he's supposed to go to his hometown, and he's supposed to do a gig there. And he walks in, and everybody remembers him as this snotty-nosed kid or the brother of so-and-so, and they don't see him as who he is, but they see him as all these labels from the past. And so he says to, all his roadies and disciples, hey, pack it up, let's get out of here, because they don't see me. And I think that came to my mind because all those characters that have recently disappeared from my story, they had a lot of labels on me, and I couldn't be myself that I feel is in alignment with just wanting to be here and be helpful. Those other characters are dragging me back into a story that was too tempting to my ego. So I'm kind of feeling joyous today, which is a real flip from where I was feeling yesterday. So I wanted to share that. And I thank you so much.
Oh,
beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that is comforting to think that it's just everything is happening as a reflection of mind, and just start to accept that now you're freed up in a way to be more yourself, more authentic, and not have to even second guess that or explain that or justify that, just to be that. And it reminds me that everything we experience is a choice. Like some of it's unconscious in terms of these beliefs that seem to dictate the choices, but it reminds me of a physician who was a surgeon who got out of being a surgeon, Bernie Siegel. He started off as a surgeon, and then he got more into prayer and more into the power of prayer. And then other surgeons used to post notes on the hospital walls like, oh, Bernie's kind of going Looney Tunes here, and he's kind of losing it and everything. Eventually, him and his wife went around traveling, speaking about the power of prayer and so forth. But I remember one book that he wrote where he was in a hospital, and he got to spend a lot of nights in hospitals. And so he would notice that people that were in the hospital would pass away, they would expire at certain times during the day or at night. And he just was observing as a physician, kind of taking notes and observing. And he found that the patients that had this great connection with their family, and there was all this love exchanged and loving acceptance, there were these deathbed scenes where they would expire with the whole family around them. They would take their last breath with the family all around him. And then he watched, some of them were kind of isolated, alone, feeling very much a lot of guilt. And he said they would slip out at 2, 3, and 4 in the morning when there was nobody around. They would just expire in the wee hours of the morning. And he was taking notes, and I was laughing because I was saying, well, there it is. Again, you spot it, you got it. You perceive it, you believe it. Everything that we experience is coming from a prayer in our heart. We get what we want to get. You know, prayers are always answered. We're always perceiving what we're believing. So it reminded me that I am responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings I experience, and I decide upon the goal I would achieve. And everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for and receive as I have asked. That's straight from the Course. That paints a real nice, tight picture there. Were there any accidents? No. Is anything at random? No. There's even a workbook lesson where he says, what happens is what I desire, and what does not occur is what I do not want to happen. Okay. Well, there goes the victimhood. Everything I experience is exactly down to a T, down to the details, the way the mind has decided it wants it, based on its belief. So again, everyone's doing the best that they can based on what they believe, and I always say, who am I to judge? People come, people go. It's in the script. Okay. I can but accept. Yeah. So thank you for bringing that up, because I thought of you today when we were watching the movie after your expression last night, that I'm sure there was lots of clearing and healing happening this weekend. So thank you, Monica.
Thank you for the miracle.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Okay, well, next we can go to Ale. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, Ken. Hi, David. With the movie, I was thinking that, like you said, David, I was praying for something that happened to me, because my dad is. I am experiencing what the movie, what we see in the movie. Since I was a little girl, my dad and my mom fight and had a difficult relationship. And I remember that I have in my heart this feeling that I really wish and desire that they have like true love for each other. So my dad has cancer now, and he has to come back to the house, and I have been watching their relationship, and I was feeling that the spirit has telling me that where you see a tragic thing, this is a gift that you ask. So I have been like seeing my mom and my dad have a true love for each other, like a holy relationship. And that's been like a miracle. It's been amazing. And I know that my dad is sick and he can go anytime, but this movie has really touched me because of that. And I know that it has been really healing in my mind, the relationship that I have with the men's, and I have a question that I feel like I have always, when I talk with you guys, I'm always making the same question, but it's still in my mind. I am very vigilant with my thoughts, and I'm every second giving my thoughts, and that has made me like a quiet person and a lonely person, because I can see my projections everywhere. So I prefer to be still and watch them and giving these projections. But I am wondering why I am so sad for this long time. It's like I don't have energy. I just want to sleep. And I'm really devoted to this. So I can see many miracles but I think that sometimes I just don't have faith. I just like sometimes I just pray, and I know that I'm just like making like in a robotic way, but I know that what it matters is that I am doing it with the purpose of forgive. So my question is like, is like this process, or it can be what can it be happening? Because with this question, I usually can say that I hear the Spirit when I ask Him and when I talk to God or Jesus. But with this question, I just I can hear. I don't know why I'm so sad for a long time if I'm really devoted to this. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that is the thing with vigilance, that it sounds like your main practice has put you to be vigilant against the projections. And the flip side of the vigilance is be vigilant for God and His kingdom. I remember there was a time when Ken came over some weeks ago to the temple, and he was lit up like a firecracker. He was dancing all over the place like Fred Astaire or whatever. And I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "I'm really focused on the joy. I've got it in my mind." And he put his full mind toward the joy. And then you could see him, he was kind of zipping around, and he was like a joy fairy going through the house. So I think that can be it. Like if you're feeling like a fatigue, like tired, and like it's work, like it's so much concentration and work. That sometimes happens when we're on guard for the projections, on guard for the temptations. There's another way of turning it around. Maybe you can talk about it, because there was that time when you got something in your mind about joy, like that was the lesson, and then you gave yourself over to that, and that seemed to really be a boost.
Yeah, because Jesus says in the Course in Miracles, truth is joy. And it was like as if it was the first time I'd ever heard it, it just clicked in my mind, and I was like, oh my God, the truth is joy. It was just like, the truth is joy. And then I think I saw you coming down the stairs, and I'm like, the truth is joy. You're like, exactly. I can't believe it. I've been doing the course all this time, and the truth is joy. And yeah, that's it. It's like I can resonate with what you're sharing, because of course, like we're looking out for the whatever's in our mind, but that can equally become obsessive with that, and then we're like, God, there's so much there, and we actually forget the true purpose of like, don't forget, there's so much joy that He wants to offer you and give you. And as David just shared, if you focus on that, that's what you're going to have. Focus on the error, you will see error. Focus on the light, you will see light. And so, yeah, that has to be the practice in the morning. When I wake up in the morning, I don't think, okay, where's all my errors in my mind? When I wake up in the morning, I do my meditation, ask for the day that I want, and it's like, bring me as much light as possible, show me as much love that I can possibly handle, give me peace. And then that sets me up for the day. And then that's always my focus. And then whatever comes in after that it's like, okay, but remember my true prayer, which is love, peace, and joy. And then that way, that's actually what's truly going to dispel it. And really praying to focus on that joy will actually come through. So yeah, that's what I found. That's for sure. Particularly when I'm focused on the errors, when that starts to get very prominent in the mind, I then have to say, okay, there has to be another way, and He is the other way. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I think you're on the flip side of, at first it is important to be attentive to your mind. And the reason it is important is because we've had so much of a history of trying to block it out, push it out, stuff it out, put it away, ignore it. We weren't attentive. And Jesus has some pretty strong words for that. Those that believe in fear are useless in my plan. Okay. Thank you for telling me that. And so we start to be more attentive to our mind and to our thoughts. But there does come a turning point where we start to realize that he really wants us to relax and to appreciate the joy and to not focus on error, as Ken was saying, because that can get to be quite a drag. And all that is an advancing in awareness towards true forgiveness, because the Holy Spirit doesn't see error. And our whole purpose is to merge with the Spirit of joy. That's the Holy Spirit. And if the Holy Spirit doesn't see error, then guess what He has in mind for us, for our mind, is overlooking error entirely. Jesus says that you don't first notice the error and then try to figure out a way to forgive it. You actually get more and more guided and more intuitive and more in the flow of the joy, and then you don't see the error. And this has been the issue for people in religion all along, is they see the sin, they spot it, and then they go, now what? And Jesus is like, yeah, that's not true forgiveness. You forgive your brother for what he has not done. You don't first... He said the ego would have you be vigilant for the errors of your brothers and sisters. And Jesus is saying, no, actually, that's not going to work at all. So it's that next step in spirituality where you get so relaxed and so aligned, you start to feel the joy more and more, and then you go with it. And you let the inspiration kind of take you. So that is what's coming. That's a foreshadowing of what's coming. You learn not to take things serious. I remember one time, I think I was with a friend in Kentucky. We were in some road in Kentucky, and we were sitting at a traffic light, and all of a sudden I heard all this smashing and crashing and broken glass, and apparently behind us there was like a giant car pileup of like a bunch of cars that had just crashed and bashed together. Boom, boom, boom. It's like a fireworks. Boom, 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 boom. And I remember I was just sitting there at the red light, and then I looked at my friend Jeffrey and looked in the rearview mirror, and it was, and then the light turned green, and I just drove off. And Jesus was like, "Good, good, good, good." Now you're getting the nothing I see means anything. It was like it was like autopilot for Jesus. Like don't get distracted. That happened to me one time when I was in university. I was walking down the street, and right on the street, right beside where I was walking on the sidewalk, there was just a big pileup of there was glass flying and fenders and parts of cars and everything. It was just like a big fireworks show. And Jesus just had me kind of look and see it all flying, and then I just continued on walking because it was just for that purpose. It's hard to convey that the whole purpose of this world is just to see the false as false. That's the highest teaching we can come to. It's never to make something of the world and then try to figure out, as if something's gone wrong, what you should do. It's more just this forgiveness is still and quietly looks and waits and watches, judges not. That's one of those passages in there. It's like, ooh, like really still. So I feel like I hear what you're saying is if it's fatiguing or you feel sad, that is not God's will for you. You're opening up, and even seeing your parents together like this now is a beautiful witness. Because a lot of times when parents argue and fight, and when children see this, and it goes on and on for years, and then the parents split up, sometime there's an interpretation like I did something wrong to make them break up. You see how the mind works. It's very devious, but people will carry that for years or decades as if they made a decision, even as a child, that they did something wrong. I wasn't a good enough child because mom and daddy broke up and divorced. And then they take that on, and that affects all their relationships with as they move along. Even their adult relationships are still playing out these unconscious decisions and beliefs that it's a crazy decision, but it's like, what did I do to cause mom and dad to break up? And, I know a lot of people I've talked to, and they say, yeah, that's me. I still am carrying this heaviness because they believe they caused something. It's just an error. So, yeah, I hold you in my prayers for joy, so you can feel more energy and lightness, and going to move through the world with a joyful feeling in your heart. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay. Right, so we can go to, we have 3 more hands, and I'll just ask everyone to please remember to be slow for our translators. We can go to Rosalind next. You can unmute.
Sí, ¿qué tal? Buenas noches con todos. Gracias.
Good evening, and thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you, Ken. I'm so grateful to be here. Yesterday, after the session we had, I was thinking a lot about how everyone was talking about special relationships. Family, friends, brothers, sisters. It was the motivation I was watching in this quarantine that I was sharing with them. And I was checking the lesson 6 in the course that was talking about special relationships. And I prayed a lot in the morning. I had a lot of thoughts of all the special family groups, etc., friends. And what came to my mind was to ask the Holy Spirit to stop categorizing. I understood that was seeing them as little and feeling incomplete myself. So from there, I woke up with that intention to understand this chapter, because it's the second time I read the book, but it's as if I'm reading it more deeply this time and doing the exercises. And a lot came to mind, like there was anguish. What can I do so these special relationships, how can they become holy relationships? And what am I doing to make these relationships holy? So I asked the Holy Spirit for that, and this movie really made me feel, don't worry about it. It's ego. This is ego. This worry is ego. You've been so focused on what you're doing, and this is ego. And what I'm asking you, as the Holy Spirit, the only thing I'm asking you through this movie is act with love, and that's related to giving. Give love, and everything else is going to flow. Your family, your groups, and even beyond that. Don't be stressed. I remember when you, David, said a few days ago that stress is ego, because I analyze everything and how can I do for this to not be special? And now I'm feeling peaceful. It's as if the movie was the answer. Leave it in my hands. Just act from your heart. And that's what you'll get. Do not worry. Don't worry about categories. Don't worry about what you have to say, what you don't have to say, because even that's what learning is all about. This is going to make you to reach like sanctity step by step through your brothers and sisters. I'm moving forward step by step, and even that I feel anger. And like there's a little monster inside of me that comes out and wants to attack. And I say, like, how is this possible? And it's the second time I'm reading the book, and I know, I take notes, and I take some names down. I'm going to forgive these people at night because there's something that I haven't healed, and that's what the book's reminding me. And these little monsters are coming up, and the movie gave me this answer: just act, and those special relationships are going to become holy, and that gives me peace.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That does keep it simpler, because like in the movie with George, confronted with the situation that he perceived with the diagnosis of cancer, he just opened up and heard, yeah, now's the time to build your house. That one thought carried him through so much healing that by the end of the movie he was just listening. He had taken the journey of the house all the way to peace and harmony. So that's the good news. You don't have to analyze. You don't have to figure it out. That's just the old programming trying to come in there to drive you mad, to get lost in obsession, obsessively thinking, could I do more? What about this? What about that? That way of thinking is not needed anymore. But through it all, you're feeling more heartfelt and prayerful. And then you got to watch the movie and see all these witnesses showing you the way through their character transformation. Started off a lot of anger, and ended with so much hugs, joy, happiness. You know, that's why we like to watch these kind of character transformation movies, to remind us that we can just pray and hold the kindness and the love in our hearts and give it as we're asked, and then it's that simple. It's just not a complicated thing. Yeah. Thank you, Rosalind.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Next, we can go to Miss Teresa. You can unmute there.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi. Yes.
Hi.
Hi. I just want to thank you for everything. A while ago, I realized that what seems most natural to my ego state is sadness and anger. So when something would happen, that's where my interpretation would go. And then I realized that joy is kind of a choice. And so, in fact, the joy is so unfamiliar and overwhelming, I'd rather sit in the anger and sadness, because the joy actually wipes you out and annihilates you, and you just sit in that joy. So sometimes something would happen, and intellectually I knew what the Course was saying, and I would feel guilty that I still had felt like I needed to cry, but I wouldn't let myself cry, because if I'm a good Course student, I wouldn't cry over this because it's not even real, blah, blah, blah. And my prayer became, okay, Holy Spirit, it seems like I have all this inside of me that needs to come out. Just show me the true interpretation. And then the miracle would come, and then the understanding would come. And then I would burst out crying just as if it was something horrible, but it was the joy understanding that came to me. And I was really crying overwhelmingly because of the joy. But I forgot about that. And when I tuned into Kenneth's session this week, because I like to see your sessions, and David mentioned that Jesus Octavio Delgado passed away, I started crying again and feeling bad. I never met him, but I did look for him on the retreats, and I had a class with him, a healing class, Calico's healing class one time, and we messaged one time, but I prayed for him a lot, and I always appreciated his poetry and his prayers. And I just started crying when I heard that he passed, and I just thanked him for his courage and his commitment and his perseverance. And then he came to me and he thanked me. He was kind of, I really do think it was him, and he thanked me. But I've still been crying until tonight, and hearing you guys remind me that it's a choice for joy. And what's really I'm crying about is the fact that I love this man I never met because of Living Miracles and all of this. And I thought of a man that I never met on random times, just said a prayer for him and felt inspired by him. And that's really the beauty of it, and really why I'm crying. And as I'm crying now, it's being released, and it's not being held in. It's being released, and I'm feeling much better and very appreciative of Jesus Octavio Delgado Borges. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, we have so much love at the thought that we have had. It's been so beautiful, just so many expansive emotions. And it wasn't too long ago, maybe, 2 or 3 weeks ago, where his wife contacted us and said a daughter was going into the hospital, and he was in with COVID, and he had breathing apparatus and everything. And so she took her cell phone in, and then, we had just such a glorious final chat together, both of us, with so much love and so many tears. And it was like an exploding kind of love. So that's what it's all for. We're not here to hold anything in or hold anything back, but we feel tears of love and gratitude. So thank you for bringing that up again. He's with us right now. Yeah. Sweet.
Okay. Well, we have Elisa there. If you're there, you can unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So Okay. I cried a lot during the movie, even though I was not expecting it. And then I had this, while I was crying, I just had this burning desire of just expressing myself from the heart. But then when I was done crying, I mean, I cried a lot. I had my tissue here. I felt somehow shut off. Like I didn't have that burning desire of pouring my heart out anymore. And it felt like I was shut off. I didn't feel alive anymore. And I didn't like that, of course. But I also, even earlier today, I wrote down something, an idea that I had, and that what I want to do is I want to extend the love. That's what I want to do. And I feel like I really want to share from my heart. But there's some fear to express myself. Because, even when I'm sharing with a guy or something, and I just want to say what I feel, and I feel like I can't, because, I was raised with all this stupid conditioning that, oh no, you're not supposed to say what you feel or what you think, because like you, David, mentioned earlier, we fear that if we express ourselves or say everything we think or feel, we're going to be rejected, pushed away, hated or something. So that's why we close ourselves up. But I can't do that anymore. So I really want to have this desire to share with others and have this connection and connect with others from my heart and just say what I feel. But sometimes I get very afraid and I repress myself, or something says, don't say that. He won't talk to you again. He won't appreciate you. Or, they always say, oh, don't tell him you love him or you care about him. He's going to start thinking pretty highly of himself and he's going to push you away and things like that. So I'm so sick of hearing that everywhere. Like, don't say what you feel, repress your feelings. I mean, I can't live like that. But sometimes I found myself expressing, and I experienced some rejection, a lot of rejection in my life, with men also. Maybe it's coming from, like you mentioned, dysfunctional family, and then you have all those beliefs and ideas that affect your future relationships. But I mean, maybe that rejection that I've been experiencing is something that is actually coming from my mind, something that is coming from me. It's not really the guys, it's just something that it's in me. And this morning also I started remembering some things about my ex-partner, and I was surprised because when we watched that movie of 12 Days of Christmas, I think it was the name, I felt that I experienced a lot of healing on that subject about my ex and my past relationship with him. And I was really happy. I was like, oh, relieved. And then today I started remembering about him, I don't know why, with pain and sorrow. And then I was like, oh my gosh, okay, so maybe there's more cleaning going on, more cleansing, and something that was deep in there and I was not aware of is coming up. So I think that's good. But at some point, I really reached a point of desperation. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm doing. I need to be shown the truth. I need to know. I need to see. And I need a lot of help. But please help me, because I can't bear this anymore. When I come to this point of desperation, like I don't know what to do, and I don't know if I should just express everything to everyone, like from my heart, without caring if they reject me or not, or if they share the same feelings or not, and just be authentic. That is what I want, but I'm afraid of being rejected and not finding that connection that I want. But yeah, sometimes I get very afraid because I don't know if I'm gonna overcome, my past experience with this ex-boyfriend or what's going on. I think what really hurt me was that I felt that I lost him, and I think that I couldn't stand the idea of losing him. And I think, I don't know, it sounds very egoic, but it's what's coming up. So I just wanted to share that. And I don't know why I feel shut off now. I felt like I was in tears, and I felt like just sharing what's in my heart with everyone, with this guy, with everyone else. But and then I don't know, it felt like it diminished that sensation. But I think that's what I want. I just want to be myself and express what I feel and just be happy and really say what's in my heart without caring what happens out there. So just I'm asking for guidance and help.
Thank you, Elisa. Yeah, it's beautiful that you're asking right here during a movie gathering, because I know for myself, I had that feeling early on. I know in my teens and my 20s, I experienced a lot of times like being shut off from expressing and shut off from my emotions, and having the same prayer that you're having. I would say, please help me. I don't like the feeling of being shut off. And so for me, like letting the Spirit guide me to lots of different music. I mean, I found the music was a way of accessing the emotions, where I would have to allow myself, like Teresa just mentioned, how sometimes we can have the programming that I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't cry, I shouldn't feel, it's not appropriate. There's so much thick programming and conditioning with that Jesus said, be patient. He said, let's work with the music first, and then years of listening to all kinds of music and letting the emotions come and crying and, letting the car wash come, just like a car wash of emotions with a lot of allowance and permission. A lot of times too, I would just be in the basement with my dog Chipper. Again, that was my therapist. Wagging tail, pink tongue treatment, and years of tears, like the Niagara Falls. Just okay, all right. I'm not in touch. Let's get in touch. And how long is this going to take? As long as it takes. Just years and years and years. And then after a long period of that, then the movies came. And, we have used movies at our monastery and our centers around the world for years. We have communities where people will come up and say, text somebody, hey, I'm watching this movie. You want to join me? Two people putting headsets on like you've got and going off to spend 2.5 hours watching a movie, expressing emotions, pausing the movie, crying. It's not what we were raised with. We weren't raised where emotions were so important. There were all rules. You just do this. Why? You should do it. Why? I told you to do it. I said so. Yeah, it's like, okay. We seem to come to the planet of the shoulds. And then finally Jesus says, don't should on yourself. Stop it. Let the emotions come freely. Let them pour. That's a new way of relating. That's a whole new way of relating. It was all so boxed in. What's appropriate. And Jesus is so good in the Course. He says, he was talking about awe. And he said, awe is only an appropriate emotion in the presence of your Creator. Because awe should be reserved for something that's greater than you. And I know you and I, we've talked about that because, sometimes it's like, well, wait a minute, I'm important. And Jesus is like, even the statement, the Father and I are one, has two parts because the Father is greater. So Jesus, he finally got it, that the Creator is the greatest. You should feel trembling awe in the presence of this love. This is the kind of love that it's so intense that everything disappears. All of time and space disappears in the presence of this great, great, great love. And he said, you should not experience awe in relationship to me, meaning don't ever feel awe in the presence of Jesus Christ, because Jesus is your equal. He says, I'm like an elder brother. You should feel love because I'm a brother. I'm a brother to you. You can feel a sense of honor and a sense of like wisdom and respect for one who has greater wisdom temporarily. But Jesus is saying, no, I'm right there with you. I'm on your same level. We feel awe for the Creator, but we are the same. And I'm only different from you in terms of the rising up, in terms of awakening. We're the same one. And then even Helen Schuckman and Bill, one time they walked into a Catholic church and they kneeled down to pray. And then they looked up and there was Jesus. And he came with them and kneeled down beside them to pray. That's equality. That's the same one that washed the feet of the apostles. Washed their feet. There's no superiority, inferiority going on there. It's complete humbleness. So it's good you can remember that in the presence of where you're talking to us, we're perfect equals. In the presence of your ex-boyfriend, perfect equal. And the emotions that you have coming up, sometimes still some hurt or some sadness when you think about your ex-boyfriend. That's part of the cleansing. That's part of the healing. And you should welcome those emotions. There's no need to push anything away. That's part of the healing right now. And we're just always grateful to see you come on screen and pour your heart out and be so transparent with us, because you're witnessing. That's for everyone. Every time you do this, you're doing it for all of us. Yeah.
I just had to say, I felt very, like a very fierce reaction when you said that God is the greatest. And wow, I felt like this sensation of inferiority came up. Like, so I am inferior to God. And maybe that's why I created this other identity, because I didn't want to be smaller than him or something. It's what it's what came out. I felt a little ashamed to share, but I wanted to expose that. I felt terrified that I was inferior to God. I was like, oh, no, please, no. I just wanted to. But maybe it's not how it is, because it doesn't feel well at all. It doesn't feel well, but I wanted to say that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's all kinds of things can come up, and that's why Jesus is a good example, because he got clear, and thank goodness he could experience awe and tell us about it.
Exactly.
But for me, when I've asked him that, is Jesus is like, hey, listen, it's really simple. God created you. You didn't create God. I'm like, okay. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, David. Well, we have one hand up at the moment. Anna, you can unmute.
Hola, buenas noches.
Hello, good evening.
Buenas noches.
I want to say that I didn't know Ken. I haven't heard him before. And I've been watching your videos, David, for a few months, and I loved your joy, the way in which you share things. And I gave myself the opportunity to be part of this retreat. I had never attended one. I was with Francis yesterday, and I can see clearly in me how before I was identified so much with the character, and now with this movie I started to cry and cry and cry, which is not something new for me, but now I don't judge it. I just let it come out because I understand that the character lived through a lot of loneliness and rejection, and I'm starting to see it like out there, not as something that's happening to me, but something that I have to heal in my mind. And now from this position, it is as if after the tears, there isn't anguish, but happiness. I start feeling a lightness related to freedom. And ever since yesterday, I watched another movie last night that I saw you recommended on your page. And I cried and cried and cried. And I said, I understand, it's the character, the one that's feeling this lack of love. And now I cry, and it is as if I don't care where I am or what other people are thinking. All my life, it's been like, don't be upset, don't do this, don't do that, and this is wrong, and do not cry. And now it is as if, let it go. Just say, Holy Spirit, I don't understand a thing. I thought I understood, but now I know I don't. It's for you. Help me see things differently. And in the last few months, I laugh more. I was going through a deep, deep depression, and I was identified with, I think Ale mentioned it, watching the thoughts. I had never watched my thoughts. And even though I do not identify them very well, I tell the Holy Spirit, I don't know what's going through my mind. I cannot see clearly, but it's something that's not mine. So you deal with it. And I've realized that the past is not that much in my head right now, but when there are triggers like the movies or a story, or when I start telling my story again, it is just let it be and just say, if this is false, I give it to you. And I want to see things the way you see them. And I'm so grateful that you are here and that you both are there, just to try and understand this and start feeling a bit better. I'm so grateful. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we're so grateful that you feel that, and it's wonderful for us to do these. Here comes our kitty cat. It's wonderful for us to do this every week, and so we have a whole month planned, and then at the end of the month, another movie tucked in the retreat. So, like I told you, that's what I heard when I woke up on January 1st. I heard 52. And I was like, 52? Oh, 52 weeks of movies. Okay. So, yeah, we're grateful that you're feeling open and the tears are flowing easily. And yeah, I think we have a community of criers. We do cry. Yeah. We're not like the Cathars. They had to basically walk in the fire back in about 1100s or something, where they renounce all your mystical beliefs or walk into the fire, and they all walked into the fire. We're the criers. We're not the fires. We're the criers. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been wonderful. A real joy for us. Yeah. We just love seeing your faces, and we love hearing what's on your hearts, and what a joy. Yeah. It's a fun way to spend 5 hours.
God, yeah. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for all your sharings. It's so beautiful. And, for me, I heard this movie last night, and then it wasn't until today I thought, oh no, if I say it, they're going to think that I'm going to want to share it. And even though I felt the inspiration with the movie, I'd only seen it once, so I was kind of a bit nervous about that. But even throughout the whole day today, that this movie kept coming and coming. And then as soon as I said it, the room sort of lit up, so it was kind of obvious. And then we asked everyone who would like to do it, and I went quiet, and I thought, I don't think I can do this one on my own. And then David said, well, I'm inspired to do it. And then after that, when I was sitting there, I felt like, yeah, I am inspired. Actually, I think I could do it together. And I felt that in the room together. But then I felt too nervous to say anything, and I'm like, oh God, I can't say it. I just couldn't say it. I was in this shutting down, and my friend yesterday called me out, and he just said, I feel like you've actually got more than what you're sharing. There's much more there, and you need to be sharing more. I'm not talking. He's saying to me, I'm not talking just about the episodes, but there's more, and you're not sharing. And I'm like, yeah, I think you're right. And I said, I think there's some sort of like unworthiness, like, okay, the shows are for me, but other times aren't for me to share. And I'm doing this and I'm doing this. I'm going to be like, oh, this is great. Okay, it's not for me. And so when this sort of came up, there was such this nervousness, and the nervousness wanted to take over and be like, yeah, it's clearly not for you. But my heart was pounding as well and saying, no, this is healing to say yes. And it wasn't until we were at the dinner table together, and I had exactly the same thoughts as everyone else. It was like, well, if I say, hey, I'm maybe feeling that I could do the movie with you, David, everyone might go, no, it's not for you. So, of course, that's what the ego says, is everyone's going to go, who do you think you are? Back, get to the back of the queue. So, so I'm like, okay, I've got to say this in front of everybody. And it was like, I had to face that and be like, hey, I'm feeling this, because I felt like there was some sort of healing in it for me. And David's like, yeah, you can do the movie with me. It's like, okay, I don't know what it's all about, but here we are. So I always feel grateful just to have these opportunities just to share in this beautiful way, and to truly share the love and the joy that's always underneath all of that when we just take a little step like that. Of course, it felt like a big step to me. But then it's a joyful step, and I'm just humbly grateful for, all of you and everyone here. So, many blessings, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Isabel, for talking about your anger, because that kind of Jesus is doing it all. He's just having fun. Then Isabel pipes up about the anger, and then Ken speaks up and says, well, I feel the movie. Eric's like, I had that movie come to mind, and then here we go. We're just watching the show. And you played your part too, Isabel. So we thank you for that. That was for all of us.
Yeah, that was actually the reason why I did speak up, because that was what was in my mind. It was like Isabel and this movie.
Okay.
It was like all in
right.
line, and I thought, okay, just say it. It could be for the whole.
Yeah.
Clearly it was.
Yeah, it's like a domino effect. Isabel spoke up, and then we all got to experience going down the rabbit hole together. Yeah. It's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Love you.
See you tomorrow, wherever you are in the world. Good afternoon, good evening,
and
good morning, good night. We have to cover Australia and New Zealand. Good morning.
They're just getting up.
Thank you.